If you've seen my last couple of videos, then you'd know that I've made these two tools, a reamer and a tenon cutter, for making a tapered mortise and tenon. I had a couple of questions where you would use a tapered mortise and tenon and you would use it in chair making, and the reason you would use it is it's a very strong joint, because as you put more weight down on the seat it drives the joint together more because it's a wedge. Here's an example. It's a very simple stool. My boy made it in a woodworking class. It was a few years ago and the joints haven't moved a bit. They're very strong and very simple. I'm going to make a stool in this video just to show how it's done. I've had the idea of making a split top and joining it with steel rods, and that look a little bit different and add some interest. My only problem is I have a fair few pieces of this silky oak, but I can't find two bits that match, and it'd be ideal to cut them out of the same piece. I found this piece out. I really like it. It has lots of rays running through it. I'm not sure if you can see that. The only problem is it's not wide enough, but I think I have an idea. To try and explain a little better, at the moment that board is 180mm and that's not wide enough for a seat. I've got my two wedges. If we make this cut straight down the middle, we slide them together like so, trim off the sides, don't need those, and we'll have a gap down the middle because it's going to be a split top, and we'll have that around about 20mm, and then that will give us around about 25 centimeters, 250mm, and that should be wide enough for a seat. To join the two halves together, I'm going to use 12mm round steel, and I think I'm going to have one around there and a second one. I've marked it here, so one around there. One of the legs, or two of the legs, are going to be on the piece sticking out here. I'm not sure how strong that's going to be. If I put this bar here, on this example with cardboard, it's going to bend, and obviously that's going to be a weak point. So I could put a bar over here on this end. I could put one in the middle and one on that end. If I put a bar here and here, then it will be less conspicuous as putting three of them and one near the end. Maybe I should, but I'm not going to do it, and we'll just see how it turns out. With the help of a 20mm spacer, I've marked out where the steel rods go, here and here. While I'm waiting for the epoxy to set on the top, I'm going to start turning the legs with this white mahogany. Before I drill the holes in the seat for the legs to go into, I'll explain the angles. The legs will go out to the side and that'll be 10 degrees, and they'll go forwards, and the back one will go backwards 10 degrees as well. So because each leg goes out 10 degrees and forward 10 degrees, then we have a compound angle between the two, and we need to know what that angle is before we drill it. You can work it out by using some maths. There's an online calculator I found. I'll put the link below. That makes it very easy. You could drill this by hand, but I'm going to do it on the drill press. To help line up the holes when I come to drill it, I'm going to clamp this board to my drill press table, and first thing I've done is I've put a 45-degree line through, and I've done the same on the underneath, so that will allow me to line it up and clamp it to the drill press table. And the next thing to do is mark out guidelines for each hole. So if I line that up to my hole position, and let's make sure I've got that on there, and with a 45 degree, because that's what I want, I'm going 10 degrees, exactly 10 degrees that way. I'll put a mark at the end of the board there, a mark at the end of this board, and then I'll take, with my square, I'll take a 90-degree line down, and the same on this one. Once this is set up and it's set at the right angle on the table, I'll show that in a minute, then we'll use these lines that we've made and we'll just line it up on that 45-degree line. This end here, you can't see that, but it's exactly the same, and that end there, and then I know I'm drilling at the right angle. The first thing to do is make sure that the table is centered with the drill bit, and I've already done that. Using the compound angle that we worked out, set your bevel gauge to that angle, and then using your bevel gauge, set the table on your drill press to the correct angle. Secure the board to the table, and that's why I put a line underneath, because I'll be able to sight that through these slots here, and I'll be able to line it up and center it. I'll just put a clamp on while I do it. I've got a couple of screws and washers, and I'll fix those from underneath. I'm going to drill the seat from the top, and just make sure you're drilling in the right direction. If you were to drill the holes here, then you would have legs that would angle inwards and they wouldn't splay out, so make sure you drill the right way. So now we have to line up the bit with the hole. So you might have a little bit of moving around, and these lines we made here, we just need to line those up on this center line here, and this one, this end. That's all good, so I'll put a couple of clamps on there and hold it in position. I've got the seat clamped down, and I'm going to use the reamer to put a taper into the leg holes to match the tapered tenons on the legs. When I marked out the guidelines on the top, I should have transferred those underneath, but I can still do that off these lines here. So this runs 45 degrees through the centre of the hole. The first thing we need to do is put a square on our guideline. So using the square and the guideline and the centre of the reamer, then we line it all up and we'll make a turn, and then we check it and make sure we're in line. If we're not, when we make the next turn, we can pull it back, so I need to come slightly left. Once we have it lined up along the guideline, we'll check our angle with the bevel gauge set at the same angle as what we used to drill the leg holes. And you can see here I'm a little bit out, so when I do my next turn, I'll pull it back and try and compensate for that. And that's much better, and with each turn, just recheck it. Check along the guideline, that's still good. If you were making a smaller mortise with this part of the reamer, then you would have to reference off the side of this part, the reamer, with the bevel gauge. So you'd have to take off 3 degrees to compensate. That's 1 down, just 3 to go. The steel rod was in the way of the bearing, so I've just got to do these little bits by hand. And I'm having to practice on the underneath first. You'd never know. It's only had 1 coat of tung oil, and I'll put another coat on tomorrow, and then over the next few days I'll put a few more on, but for now that's finished for this video anyway. I don't quite know what to make of it. I certainly don't love it, but I don't think it's too bad, and it was fun experimenting, and that's basically what it was. And I wanted to show how to do the tapered mortise and tenons. I quite like the idea of taking that narrower board and making it wider, and what I could have done to make things a lot easier, but I didn't want to do that because I was experimenting. I could have put a contrasting bit of wood in there, and I could have made that as wide as I wanted to make it then, and it would have looked quite good. It would have been better because I wouldn't have had a leg sticking out on this little bit here, even though it seems plenty strong enough. I wouldn't abuse it and jump up and down on it, but just for sitting on it, I'm sure it's plenty strong enough. But if I had put that contrasting wood in there and made into one slab, I could have brought the legs in a little bit more, and that would have been stronger because there's not much meat on the outside of the leg. It was a fun project, it got me thinking, and I enjoyed it, so hopefully you enjoyed it too. If you did, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.